Well, now, unthinkable, that's the word used by one of Brussels' former top bureaucrats about the idea of a second referendum on Britain's membership of the European Union. It's after some high-profile campaigners had suggested that voting out could strengthen the UK's negotiating position. Well, that man is, of course, Manuel Barroso, who was president of the European Commission until just over a year ago. And he joined me from Princeton University in the United States. And I started by asking him if he thought the Prime Minister had negotiated a good deal for the UK.
I really think he got a good deal. I mean, it was difficult. We have to understand that there are 28 countries in the European Union, so it's not so easy to find a consensus. And in fact, what David Cameron was asking for was a complete exception, an exception from the general rules, including something that has to do with the very important principle of freedom of movement and the principle of non-discrimination. So having this in mind, I really believe it was a good deal. And now, of course, I hope that it will be supported by the British people.
No doubt you're following the arguments in the UK. And one of the main ones at the moment is about whether the deal will actually be legally binding, because there is no treaty change involved.
No, but there is a commitment to make the treaty change, and so it will be legally binding. I don't know the details of debate in Britain, but one thing I know well how the European Union works. And if there is a commitment, the commitment will be respected by all the other member states.
And also another discussion that somehow if the British people were to vote to leave, that there might be room for more negotiation and then perhaps a second referendum.
Frankly, I don't believe that can happen. That will be really, unthinkable. I would say it's practically impossible. There was a very tough negotiation. As you know, I was in fact saying that before the summit. There will be drama, there will be a tough negotiation, but at the end I hope there will be an agreement. The agreement was possible, but it was not easy to get. Now, if British people now have the final word. If they want to remain, they are most welcome. But if the British people want to leave the European Union, we have to respect that. And I think it will be not also very, let's say, fair to the voters to try to change their mind afterwards with something new. So, frankly, it's now in the hands of the British citizens to decide if they want or not to remain in the European Union.
So when Mr Cameron says that he would invoke the next day Article 50, which then starts the whole process for Britain leaving the European Union if there is a leave vote, the other 27 members of the European Union would agree with that and encourage him to do it too.
Look, I'm not in a position now to elaborate on hypothetical scenarios. What I know is that there was an agreement between Britain and all the other countries of Europe, and now there will be a referendum to say yes or no, if Britain wants to remain or no. Now, about hypothetical scenarios, frankly, I'm not properly equipped to answer to them.
What about the idea, and this was expressed by Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, that he said he's really afraid that it might appear a very attractive model for some politicians in Europe to achieve some internal and very egotistical goals, he says. In other words, other countries might have a go at what Britain's done.
Of course, that's really a danger. In fact, it's already happening. I've heard that now the Hungarian government already mentioned the possibility of a referendum on the issue of refugees. We have nothing, and at least I have nothing, against direct democracy. But the European Union is not just one political system, one democracy. It's 28 democracies that are constantly negotiating. And as you know, if every time there is a tough issue, a member says, I'm going to make a referendum, I want some exceptions, it will not work. Because at the same time that we have national democracies, it's an international, permanent international negotiation. So I really would like to think that this British case is exceptional. Indeed, there is some exceptionality already in the British situation. Britain, as you know, has a permanent opt-out from the euro. Britain is not a member of Schengen. So there is indeed already now exceptional situation. And now, after this agreement, Britain got, let's say, the confirmation of this exceptional status inside the European Union. That was possible because the other countries very much want Britain to remain in the European Union. But now if we accept it as a kind of a rule, then the so-called Europe à la carte, as sometimes we say in Europe, then we'll have not the possibility of the European Union working properly. And I think it should be on everyone's interest that the European Union, that is not perfect, but basically was so important to give us peace and prosperity that it works properly.
And we know the strains that the European Union is under with the Eurozone crisis, the migration crisis, of course. Would it be further destabilised if Britain left?
Of course. And not only the stabilisation in terms of institutions, but also in more fundamental geopolitical terms. I think Prime Minister Cameron is absolutely right when he says the vote yes is a matter of national security. We are facing in Europe very serious challenges, not only in the East, with a very assertive and sometimes aggressive Russia. We are also facing instability in the very close to us, in the Mediterranean, including the terrorist threat. So Europe without Britain will be weaker. I know someone who is going to be commemorating that. It will not only be some Eurosceptics in Britain. They will be together with President Putin in Moscow, because everything he's trying to do is to show that Europe will be divided. So in terms of our overall stability and security, what is at stake is indeed very, very important. By the way, it's not by some absurd thing that the Americans, here where I am now, I'm now at Princeton, the Americans are asking the British people to vote yes, because for West in general, it will be certainly a defeat if the European Union loses one of its most important members, indeed one of the most important countries in the world.
And if the UK does vote yes, would you expect it, as has been expressed by many in the European Union, that Britain would then take a more active and central role within the European Union?
Yes. And in fact, during my 10 years in leading the European Commission, the European Union, and also before as Prime Minister and as Foreign Minister, many years, Britain was leading. Even with Mrs. Thatcher, she was considered a Eurosceptic, but frankly, Mrs. Thatcher was extremely important for the enlargement process, for the internal market deepening, and so on. With Blair, also for the climate change talks. It will be impossible for the European Union, I can tell you because I was leading the European Commission at that time, it will be impossible for the European Union to agree on such an ambitious climate policy without British leadership. And also with David Cameron, everything that has to do with better regulation, simplifying regulation, that owes a lot to British leadership. So I would like to see, but that's my personal opinion, Britain at the centre of the European Union. And let me tell you, I'm coming from Portugal, as you know, but I think most medium-sized or smaller countries in Europe would like to have that. We would like to have a Europe without hegemony. So it is important that Germany, but also France, Britain and other bigger countries in Europe cooperate and that they support this common, let's say, enterprise we have. Britain is one of the biggest shareholders in the European Union. And it will be a pity, I really believe, for all of us, and I will say also for Britain, I hope, I suppose, that if we don't defend our own common good together.
And lastly, Mr. Barroso, you mentioned the refugee crisis, the migration crisis. Do you fear that that might have an influence on the vote in the UK, which takes place in the early summer? If the British people see hundreds of thousands more refugees flooding into the European Union, they might be more tempted to vote to leave.
I'm afraid it may have some impact, yes, because wrongly it is associated with the European Union, when in fact it was not the European Union that was creating these difficulties. And with or without European Union, with or without Schengen, we will have to face the refugees crisis, because they will come to Europe, they will try to come to our countries. So yes, there is that risk, and the fact that we are now approaching summer, where more refugees cross the Mediterranean and more illegal migrants try to reach our shores, that may have an impact. That's why I have to tell you very frankly, I'm concerned about what can be the result of the referendum. At the end, I'm sometimes considered and I'm accused of being an Anglophile. I very much trust the common sense, the wisdom, the pragmatism of the British people. And even those that don't love the European Union, I believe that they will be at the end making a rational choice. Why should we change now? Why should we put at risk what we have? Or why should we make a jump in the dark? So I'm still confident, but I have to be honest, I'm concerned about the result of the next referendum.
José Manuel Barroso, thank you so much for your time. We very much appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.